Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial for church finances. In this tutorial we will be using a free software program that is available for any of the major operating systems, whether it be Mac, Windows, or even Linux, and some ready-made templates that we have. Let's get started by navigating to 1689seeds.org. From there you can go to the resources section, which will take you to this web page that we have set up to show you all of these different document templates that churches can take and use and modify to their liking. We have a constitution and church membership covenant and application, as well as some theological documents. We have a church planting guide and some church business templates like a meeting minutes and agenda and budget proposal template as well. And lastly, here in this financial management section, we'll have this first button here will take you to the GNUCash.org website so you can download that software for your operating system. Once you have that installed, you can then open up these ledger template files that we have created. These two books are separated because we don't want what individuals are giving showing up on the reports that all the church sees, right? We want that to be separated. Maybe you already have a solution that's tracking your offerings, but if not, you can just use this. Whichever way you go about doing it, you're going to have to put in that information, the overall amount of offerings that you get as transactions in this general ledger template. I already have those two files downloaded. When you download them, it'll be the same accounts as what you see in this tutorial, but there are no transactions. It's all zeroed out. But I've put some transactions in here for the purposes of this tutorial. And before we begin, I do want to make note that it will create some log files, and it will create a lot of them every so often, which are nice to have so you can go back to a previous save of it. It just automatically saves every so often. So I would put these GNUCash files in its own folder, and that way it doesn't clog up your desktop or some other folder. And you'll notice that the accounts that we have in this book are set up in a hierarchy. You have parent and child accounts. And if you expand that, you will see that there are just different accounts here. And these accounts really are just placeholder accounts for organizing that hierarchy. You don't really necessarily need to put transactions in those. You can if you want to. And if you do a new account, you'll see those options here whenever you go to create a new account and name it. You can either make it a top level account or you can designate which account is going to be its parent and whether or not it is a placeholder. Again, placeholders are just sorting for the hierarchy. You are not able to put transactions in that account once it is set as a placeholder unless you uncheck it. And other configurations like the opening balance that it'll have, and so on and so forth. Or in your equity, you can set what opening balance you have. And if you don't understand what that is, that's basically like if you have $1,000 cash that you just have right at the beginning in the get-go, you would need to account for that somehow. Otherwise, your equity will just build up if you have automatically from retained earnings if you have more assets than you do expenses or liabilities in the period. And we want to understand these different accounts as well. So there are two, which is your income and expenses. Those are basically money coming in and money going out, right? So income from anything from donations, offerings, your interest that you earn on your money being in the bank are all forms of income, and you can track those under the income account. And expenses are things like your mortgage or lease payment, your office expenses, or anything that you are having to pay for. The other three, being your assets, liability, and equity, would be stuff that you have is always going to be equal to either your organization having ownership of it, which is equity, or it being laid claim to by creditors. Examples of this would be cash that you have. If you own that cash, right, it's not advanced to you. That would just be equity that you have. Otherwise, if you have a property or a building or a vehicle that you financed, that would be a liability that you owe to that creditor. And as you make payments on the vehicle or the property, the liability amount decreases and the equity amount increases. And the asset stays the same, all factors considered, right? Now, the value of the asset, of course, could change due to appreciation or depreciation, but excluding that factor, all of these are going to be in a balancing act, as you see here. And the system will enforce that. As you see here with this imbalance account, even if you don't have that account, if you enter in a transaction without a account that is the debit or the credit, you will see this imbalance account show up, and it will have the other end of that transaction. So if you see transactions in this imbalance account, that just basically tells you need to go and fix those transactions so that it will balance, because you want this to be zero or empty. Now let's take a look at the reports really quickly. The first thing is a budget, which you can do in the software. I don't really like it. I'm sure you could look up a tutorial on that if you want. That is why I saved this budget example here out on the website. You can download it, and it's in spreadsheet format. And that is just much easier working with when you're trying to build out a proposed budget. And hopefully your church will approve the budget. But as you have to make changes and whatnot, this is just much easier working with and to print out like this. And it can work in any spreadsheet. This is Google Sheets. You can use Microsoft spreadsheets in Excel or any other program that will do spreadsheets. And your prior year will be on the right here for reference. And your current year that you're wanting to propose a budget for is here in white. The monthly columns are auto-calculated based off of the annual figure divided by 12. So you're just really putting in the annual figures here, and the monthly figures get calculated as well. And same for these top-level rows. The totals or the top-level rows here, those are just summations of what's below automatically. But if you want to, you can learn how to do a budget if you want on your own time, but we don't have the time for that in this tutorial. So let's go over to our income and expense. The income statement that you see will basically be a period for whatever you set it to be. By default, it's going to be this accounting period. But you can change that to be any date range. So if we wanted to change it to be last year's, we can do that. And we have the income statement for the whole of last year. Or you can change it to be a particular quarter or month of the year, whatever you need. The other thing that, as you saw, are the accounts. In the configuration, by default, all of your income and all of your expense accounts, all of those are just going to be on this report. That's fine. You don't need or want any other kinds of accounts like what we covered previously in the assets, equity, and liability. That will be on the balance sheet report, which we'll cover here soon. And as you can see, for last year, we were in the black because the revenues were greater than the expenses, leaving a net income of about $2,600 for the period. So we had some retained earnings. And as you can see in our current period, our current accounting period, which is the year in 2025, we have spent more than what we have taken in so far. And that's okay because we have cash in the bank. And you can see that here in the profits, or when we first generated that income statement and it was still showing our 2025 figures. That is okay. We expect, to have income coming in throughout the rest of the year that will be greater than our expenses. That's what we budgeted for. And at particular periods of the year, depending on how you slice it, or how far along you are into the year, your income and your expenses, one might, be greater than the other, and that's okay. Just hopefully that you are tracking these things in accordance with your budget. And if you need to go and adjust your budget at some point during the year, your church can do that. If you expect a shortfall in giving, or if the Lord provides, if you have a lot more money coming in for whatever reason, you can adjust the budget to do more things for your church at some point during the year. Or wait to the next budget and for the next year. The next report, like we mentioned, is the balance sheet. So those accounts that were not in the income statement, those are going to be in the balance sheet. So the income statement was more of a period of time, right, where it from one date to another, all of the income and expenses that were incurred during that period are reported out in total for that period of time. But a balance sheet is actually a snapshot, a point in time. And this is set to our default accounting period, which is the end of 12/31/2025, the end of the year, or we could change it to be last year's 12/31/2024 if we needed 2024's overall balance sheet. Or you could set it to the end of a period for the month or the quarter if you needed the balance sheet for your quarterly or monthly business meeting. And similarly to the income statement, you can select all the accounts that you want to show. By default, all of the assets and liability and equity are shown on this report. You're not going to show your income or expense. And if you needed to change that date for whatever reason, you could do here as well and press apply. So let's, for example's sake, change it to last year, 2024. Well, we want to see the end, so that would be 12/31. And press apply. And that would be our balance sheet as of year end for 2024. The next thing we will want to cover is an end-to-end example of a transaction, and beginning with our offerings ledger so we can see how that all works. So let's open up our offerings ledger and start there. So when you get monies in from offerings, that is an income account in this ledger. And we have a dummy person. Y'all might know him, Charles Spurgeon. And let's say he gave $1,000 to the general fund. In the year 1689, if it would let us. And there you go. You see that Charles Spurgeon, we tracked a donation from him and it went to the general fund. Now, if you want to know more about designated funds, I would recommend checking out this guidance that we have here out on the website. You can find it here at this bottom button. And basically, long story short, is you will want most of your daily or usual expenses coming out of the general fund, and you want people ideally giving to the general fund. But you can elect to have other funds set up that are designated for particular purposes. And if you needed to transfer funds from one to the other, you would just need to have your church approve that. The other thing that you would have to consider is if you have a designated gift from an individual that is to be used for a particular purpose, you would need to get the written permission of that person to sign off on it being used for other purposes, or you can return the monies, whatever you got to do. In our church, we only have these few set up. You might have a building fund, for example. But for the simplicity of this tutorial, we're just going to have the $1,000 from Charles Spurgeon go to the general fund, and we might even have some loose cash as well. So let's say some anonymous person just dropped off $1689. And now we have 2,689 for our total for our general fund and our assets. And we know who is doing that, who gave what. And we would also track any online giving that they did or whatever have you in their specific accounts as separate transactions. But when you have, let's say, a collection on Sunday, you will want to use this count sheet to track those offerings like checks and cash and coins, right? And you can have two people count that and sign off on it. And whatever that total amount is going to be the offering that we will record on our general ledger back on the accounting side. Let's open that. Now, most of these are Sunday offerings that we did on a particular date, whatever that total is from that count sheet that got deposited. The other that you see here are just the transaction identifiers from our Squarespace payouts, which is our online giving platform, whichever platform you use for online giving. We have a assets account set up for the Squarespace payouts because when we get those monies, that is where they sit until Squarespace transfers it out to our bank account, as you can see here in a bank transfer. And when they do that, they of course also earn their money by doing processing fees. So you will most definitely want to track any processing fees, whether that is a flat amount or a percent of the transaction. You will want to track that somehow in a different account. And so we have in our expenses an administration set up for donation processing fees, which you can see here. And that is how we log that. So when someone gives, let's go back to the Squarespace payout. This first offering that we did as a test run of it, we just did $100 through the platform, and we can see that it deposited $93.80 right into our checking account, and it was earmarked to the general fund. When we did the donation, we could have selected a different fund, and the donation processing fees that they charged, whatever percentage that was, we did the $6.20 to that expense account designated for that. So these two values would equal the total for that received income offering. Now let's take, for example, the in-person offerings like the cash or checks or whatever. When those are received as part of the Sunday offerings, we first have those in the Cashbox account. We have the on-site safe or Cashbox, whatever you want to call it. And we would, depending on if they did like an envelope, let's say if they just put cash in with no envelope and no marker as to who they are, of course, that's just loose cash and it just goes straight to the general fund. But they could put an envelope with their name on it, and if they don't say where it's going to go, we just put it in the general fund. Otherwise, we mark up which fund within here that it belongs to in the cash box until it's time to transfer that. And once the money is taken from the cash box to the bank, we can then just transfer those monies from the cash box to the bank in the transactions here. So let's take a look at that. So as you see, this first bank deposit we did on May 15th, 2024, came from the Cashbox General Fund, and it deposited $532. That's when we opened our bank account, and we had $532 in our general fund in our Cashbox, and when we transferred it to the checking account, we put it there. There was more monies than that in general, but that's what was belonging to the general fund, remember, because there was also, as you can see, 50 to that fund and 50 to this fund. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind with designated funds. Your use case, you might not even do the cash box. You can forgo that if you want to, if you don't want to have that account set up to track it while it's sitting in the cash box. You could, of course, just take it right away to the bank and deposit it and forgo that if you wanted to. But you do need to keep in mind that whatever money's holding that you have, you need to have it have the different accounts for funds, because when you look at your checking account from your bank's not going to tell you, well, this much is your general fund and this much is your building fund or whatever. They just know how much money you have in your checking account. So that is why you want to track those designated funds in any money pots that you have. The other thing that you might have noticed here is the petty cash fund. In our bylaws, we have $100 set aside to the treasurer for their petty cash fund. Ideally, everything that you do an expense reimbursement for should be a check. But if it's a very small amount, that's why we have this petty cash fund. We have $100 in cash on site in ones, and we can reimburse someone for an expense that way. But you need to do an expense reimbursement form. We have that template here. And it basically, someone will just provide this form, fill it out, and attach the receipts or copies of receipts that they have, and get it approved by your approvers in your church. And then the treasurer can then disperse to that person what they are owed for their expenses. And that is pretty much it for this tutorial. I'm sure there are some other things that uh, I might have missed. I'm sure you can find those in tutorials or articles out there online. But if you want to reach out to our 1689 Seeds contact, if you are a church plant and you are needing some assistance with any of these resources, you can just go to the contact form and fill out this form and press submit, and we will get that in a email. You could also just directly email here, info@1689seeds.org. Alternatively, you can leave a comment reply on this video on YouTube or wherever else, and we will try and get you a response as quickly as possible. Thank you again for watching this tutorial video, and God bless.